السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. One of the objectives, what are called the maqasid of Islamic law and Islamic teachings, is to preserve human life. Another primary objective is to preserve human resources and wealth. So all those activities that compromise the preservation of human life by default would be shunned in Islam. Similarly, all of those activities which would compromise the preservation of resources and wealth would also be by default shunned in Islam. People posed a question as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ conveyed his message and people started taking that message. For the first 13 years, the emphasis was on faith, building character, and belief and perseverance. After 13 years, the context of revelation began to focus more on the how-to of things, the why of things, and what to do and what not to do. So, as questions were posed to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, answers would be given. And there is a whole series of questions that are mentioned in the Quran, and those verses begin with يَسْأَلُونَكَ. They ask you, they inquire from you. One of those questions was about liquor and gambling. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ. Now, the way the Quranic revelation occurred is that there was a graduation in commandments. Commandments, especially pertaining to things that society was extremely used to, they were a part and parcel of society. The injunctions and commandments pertaining to them did not come suddenly, rather they came in phases. So the first phase was regarding these two things. They're asking you about liquor and gambling. So the initial answer was قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. Tell them that in these two activities, gambling and liquor, there is great sin, but also some benefit for people. There is some enjoyment, there is some gain. Obviously, if somebody is selling liquor, then there is money to be made. It's something that people enjoy as a social drink. It's something that helps alleviate a lot of things at a symptomatic level. And same thing with gambling, because there's always a chance that you might win. There's a hope that you will win. But إِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. Their harm by far exceeds their benefits. This was the initial discourse that occurred in Islamic texts about this. So it put things in perspective. It was not a very heavy-handed approach. It was that, look, yes, we know that people are doing this, and you also know of the harms of this, but just keep in mind the next time you're inclined to approach it, that the harms by far outweigh the benefits. I remember in a police academy that I attended in Vancouver, Canada, one of the sessions we had towards the end of it was with the chief of police for the city of Vancouver, Chief Jim Chu. And at that time, there was a raging debate in our province about legalizing marijuana. And, it had become politicized, and there were a lot of discussions and conversations taking place. So the question was posed to the chief of police that, what's your view on this? And his answer was very, very amazing. And it built a lot of respect in my heart for that man. He said, you're asking me about legalizing marijuana. Don't you think it's bad enough that liquor is legal? And that answer actually, it caught everyone off guard because no one expected that. They expected a more politically correct statement. He said, isn't it bad enough that liquor is legal? He said, let me put that in perspective for you guys. People go to the liquor store and buy their liquor. It could be to celebrate Christmas, could be to celebrate a birthday, it could be just because they want to have a few drinks. That's the side of it that you see. Our people are the ones going and picking up the pieces after that happens. We're the ones mopping up the bodies off the floor. We're the ones having to go and knock on doors and tell mothers that their son is no more because he was run over by a drunk driver or because he was killed in a fight at a bar. And so he says, we're the ones picking up the pieces. So ask us what the impact is on society. And we all know, and that's what brings us here, that gambling is very similar. So where liquor was one of the things that compromises the preservation of human life because it compromises the sanctity of human intellect. It puts a cover on it. The word for liquor in Arabic is khamr. And khamr means that which veils. It veils your thinking and your judgment. You're not able to make accurate judgments. And gambling is, as many people will argue, even more addictive than substances. It's an emotional addiction. It becomes a part and parcel of you. It is something, and today it has become so accessible that just like our phones are, we have this gut reaction to pull out our phones. Imagine if every time somebody pulled out their phone, it was coupled with the instinct to do a bit of betting at the same time. And we have headed into that space and into that world. And the damage is, some figures were just presented, but I don't think that gives the whole picture of how do you estimate the damage that's done to families? How do you estimate the broken families and the lost lives and the suicides? And it goes on and on and on. This is a very vicious cycle. So to summarize, from the Islamic perspective, anything that compromises the preservation of human life or compromises the preservation of human resources and wealth, it is a problem. And it has been called out as a problem. And not just the act itself, but rather all of the things, the environments, the sort of habits that might lead to that, they've also been called out as you need to be aware of this. So if it's friends that are gambling, I know many people that got into gambling just because that's what the boys did after work. They went over, to have a few drinks and go to the casino for a bit. And that was their thing. And I know people that got so locked into this, it started out with just, betting with just a few dollars, pocket change. That very rapidly increased to the hundreds and to the thousands. I remember once somebody called my mother. It was the son of a very good friend of hers. He was in another city and desperate from this man was a millionaire. He had made a lot of money in the real estate industry. And of all people, he called my mom, who was absolutely not a wealthy person, to tell her this story of how he had just lost all his money to gambling. And now he's in a big, serious situation and if he can help her out. So how quickly a person falls. So I think in terms of the responsibility of community leaders, one is to increase the awareness and to educate people. And the other is from a moral or religious perspective to highlight to them why this is religiously incorrect, why this will damage people, damage families, damage society, and lead to these vicious cycles from which it is virtually impossible to climb out. So I hope that gatherings like this will continue to take place. The awareness will continue to increase, and programs will be implemented to rehabilitate people and to try to wean them off of these addictions. Thank you very much.